Hello and welcome to week 4 of English 1302. We are in module 3. We are in our final module. Let's get started. All right, guys, we are in the next to last week of this 5-week class. If you've been keeping up, good job. Otherwise, you need to really get on it and get that work turned in. All right, this week we are looking at Isaac Asimov as our next author. So this week we will be doing pretty much exactly the same thing as we did with Vonnegut in terms of assignments. Next week will be the synthesis essay. You'll have a little bit less time for that, unfortunately, because of the end of the semester, but I do have that information about the synthesis essay open. After you listen to this lecture, you should be able to see that, and I will have a separate lecture this week, a little bit later this week, about the synthesis essay and the expectations on that. So let's take a look at what we've got going on. So just like we did with Vonnegut, we are doing a life and times of Isaac Asimov. I think, again, this is the best way for you to find a little bit about him by doing the different interesting facts about the author. So I hope that you agree. So make sure that you take a look at that discussion board and make sure that you, just like last week, do your initial post about your interesting fact by Wednesday, and then by Saturday, reply to 2 classmates' posts. We have the discussion questions here and the stories. Now, just like last week, some of y'all did not pay attention. These are not, the discussion questions here are not for an assignment. You are not turning in these discussion questions. This is the story and questions that you should be able to answer by the end of reading the story. I'm not taking a grade on these simply because we don't have enough time to grade all these things and get them back to you. So make sure that you can answer these questions for yourself. If you have a question about one of these questions, email me if you don't understand something, or go to the internet. Y'all are very fond of going to the internet to find out answers to questions. So if you are looking through these discussion questions, you've read the story and you still don't understand what's going on with it, go to the internet and it should help you. Now, that's what's going on with the assignment for both of these. They're not really assignments. They are literally the 2 stories. So that is the last question is the first story we're reading. The second story is the last answer. They are sort of related, but not completely. Then we have the discussion board. Again, just like last week with Vonnegut, you're being asked specific questions with regards to the stories and Asimov and futurism. So like Shirley Jackson was psychological horror and Vonnegut was dystopia. Asimov is a little more positive in that he is related to futurism and looking ahead to see where we will go as humanity progresses. Asimov was really, well, he was what he called himself a humanist. Um, and he really believed in mankind and mankind's ability. So that's what's going on with the discussion board. So again, Wednesday, you should have those discussion board, your initial post done, and then Saturday, the response. And then finally, there is an analytical response for the Asimov stories, just like there was for Vonnegut. So be sure that you keep up with what's going on this week. But let's take a quick look at a couple of things because I really want to talk to you about the last question. It's a different kind of story. Now, Asimov, as you may or may not know, is a master of science fiction. And I understand if science fiction is not your bag, I get it. Um, Science fiction happens to be my bag, but it's okay. It's not for everybody. Now, before everybody freaks out and goes, I don't like science fiction, I don't want to read it. This is not the same kind of Star Wars science fiction. So it's not like, Baby Yoda and spaceships and all of that. Well, there are some spaceships, but there's no laser fights or anything like that. It's actually pure science fiction. So now that you're really turned off, hopefully not, just bear that in mind. Sometimes we have to read things that we don't necessarily enjoy reading. So sorry if you don't like it. And if you do find that you like it, great. But this is definitely science fiction. And it is, both stories are set, well, the first story is set for sure in the future. Um, Now, a little bit of background about The Last Question. As you will discover, Asimov wrote a lot of things. And he wrote novels and short stories and articles and nonfiction books and all kinds of stuff. But The Last Question was his absolute favorite short story that he ever wrote, as he will tell you. And what I think is kind of awesome for this assignment, I have a recording here of Asimov reading The Last Question, which I know I had the same thing for Jackson, and I may still be able to find stuff for Vonnegut, but I'm really excited about Asimov reading The Last Question because he reads it with a certain enthusiasm that uh, probably was lacking with Shirley Jackson, because while The Lottery did um, really kickstart her career and her popularity as a writer, I'm not sure that The Lottery was her favorite story. In fact, I'm pretty sure it wasn't. But she did, she did read it. She did understand that that's what made her. However, Asimov, The Last Question did not make him. That wasn't his uh, breaking out point. But he loved this story, and I think some of that shines through when he reads it. So we have a very special recording. It's very special to me. You probably will just think it's some old guy reading a story. It's fine. But this is Isaac Asimov reading The Last Question. This is The Last Question. Now, take a deep breath before we open this up. Don't freak out. The Last Question is kind of long, and it's very dense. And I need to explain how to read this story, because some of you are going to take a look at this and go, and just close it and leave. Don't do that. Some of you are going to say, I don't understand it because it's science fiction. Don't do that. When you sit down to read the story, and you should do it as soon as possible, you need to clear your schedule, turn off your notifications on your phone, and pick some time to sit and listen to it. Now, to be fair, if you just read it through, Asimov reads it through, and I want to say it's 32 minutes. So it's a 32-minute story. Give yourself plenty of time. If you just want to listen to him read it while you look through it on another screen, I think that's a really good use of your time. But there are certain conventions about the story you need to know about. So at the very beginning here, we have Asimov talking about how it was his favorite story. And then we go into the story. Now, I want you to notice something. This is a visual clue about this story. These little bars here, these dividers, they're throughout the story. Okay? You'll see them throughout the story. I'm not going to sit here and go through all of them, but they appear periodically, every couple of pages. Those bars are important. They are a visual representation of the fact that every time you see one of those bars, the story jumps ahead thousands, if not millions of years. Okay, let me repeat that. When you see a bar, the story jumps ahead thousands, if not millions of years. This particular story takes place over trillions of years. Now, that's a really big number. I know we deal with millions and billions. We hear it all the time now in social media about certain people and their wealth. But that is a huge number. And it's kind of hard sometimes for our brains to wrap around, to grasp. It certainly was for me. I have some visual representations. I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a minute. But just know you're not crazy when you get to that line and suddenly the characters change. The story remains the same, but the characters are going to change. And they're going to be weird. Okay, I'm just going to tell you that straight up. They are going to be weird, but they're still part of the story. So think of it as like a movie, a vignette movie. You know, if you've ever seen, there's certain movies that tell different stories about the same kind of place, but they're all together. That's just kind of what this is like. it's kind of like, well, like Pulp Fiction seems like it's many different movies all at once. If you've never seen Pulp Fiction, it's okay, I understand. Um, there's several movies like that. They're all like there's a couple movies about hotels, and it's all the different stories about people who are staying in the hotel or work in the hotel, but they're all together in one movie. So the location stays the same, but the characters change. So that's what's happening here. And again, it's jumping ahead in the future, so it is going to be different. All right. So just be aware of that. Now, there's a there's a kind of a twist ending to this. I'm not going to give it away. It's actually kind of cool, so please be sure to read through it, and please try to do so with an open mind because it's it's actually a really good story. Um, I may be biased, but it's actually a good story. So that's the last question. Now, before we go on to the last answer, let's take a look at what does a trillion look like. So I put this in here for you as a visual representation. Um, and here, you've got one person standing next to a stack of $1 million in $100 bills. So even here, this is still already been condensed. So that's $100 bills, a stack of them that equals $1 million. All right. So you probably could carry that out. I mean, it would be heavy, but I would certainly figure out a way to carry that out. Um, then you have a stack of what $100 million looks like in $100 bills. Remember, these are $100 bills, not $1 bills. That would be too much, but $100 bills. And it's a pallet's worth of money. So if you've seen Breaking Bad, you remember they had the couple of pallets worth of money. There you go. Then you have $1 billion, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is it 8 or 10? It's hard to tell in this picture. 1, 2, 3. That's 10. So you have 10 pallets of $100 bills that each equal $100 million. That's $1 billion. You see how exponentially different it goes up from a million to a billion? That's a lot. Now, this is what $1 trillion looks like. Notice our human being is standing over here, and it is double stacked pallets of $100 million each. That is how much $1 trillion is. Now, if this were just $1 bills, this would be exponentially bigger. So that's just $100 bills. So that is more. They say it's more money than you could spend in a lifetime. I think I would take that as a personal challenge. But um, yeah, that's a lot of money. So when we are talking about $1 trillion in terms of the story, it is that many years has passed. And actually, this is not the best representation because it would be even more than this if they were $1 bills. So that's trying to give you an idea of how far the time goes into the future in this story. And the story already starts in the future. It starts in 2061. So hopefully when it starts, it's very much like we are living right now. And it starts out talking about a giant computer. Now remember, when you look at Isaac Asimov and you're going to look at him, and when you do the discussion board, there is an article and a video about Isaac Asimov and futurism. Isaac Asimov passed away in the early 90s, and he still did things like predicted, especially like with this story. He did make predictions, like specific predictions about things, but with the story, he basically predicted uh, what we're going through, what we're starting to go through right now, really, with AI, and how and he's predicted cloud. How we have the cloud, we save everything to the cloud. He's predicted that. He's predicting uh, what could happen in the story, and it's not going to ruin the story for you. Basically, it starts out they've got this giant computer, and the giant computer man-made. It's got a couple of engineers that are taking care of the giant computer. And what has happened is the giant computer has figured out how to harness 100% of the energy coming from the sun. Now, you might tell yourself, well, we already do that. We have solar powers, we can do that. But we do, and we do get a lot of energy actually from the sun. And obviously, we wouldn't be able to live without the sun. As human beings, the earth would not exist. If the sun went away, everything would go away. But we don't harness even 1% of the actual power of the sun. And in this story, the computer has helped mankind figure out a way to harness 100% of the energy coming from the sun. So much so that they don't need fossil fuels anymore, but they don't need wind power. They don't need any of that. They just are using the power that comes from the sun. And this story is really about what happens when human beings have unlimited potential. And what I mean by that is that most of the time, currently in our lives, we are limited by power. And this is the kind of thing that we are beginning to see right now with the uptick of data centers and AI usage and all of that. It's drawing a lot of power. It's why our energy bills are going up. Uh, we have only so much power that we can access. I mean, sure, do we harness it from the sun and wind? Yes, we're trying our dangest to get all this power from these different sources. Um, but we've still not figured out how to harness 100% of it coming from the sun. And that's what this story is about. It's about humankind finding out how to get that power and what happens when you have unlimited actual power, not like metaphorical power, but like fuel, like energy, like electricity, whatever it is that makes things go. When you have an unlimited source of that, what are human beings capable of? And that's what this story is about. And it's actually kind of a positive thing. So there you go. But that infographic there helps with that. So let's move on to the last answer. So this story is a very different one from the last question. Now, when I created the course, did I choose them because their names were very similar? I'm going to fess up that I did because I thought it was clever. You had the last question and the last answer, and I thought that was amazing that he had two stories that seemed to go together like that. Now, I'm here to tell you they don't actually go together. They're not the same characters. They're not even set in the same timeline. The last answer, I think you will find to be an easier story to read. I don't have to really explain it to you like I did with the last question. The last answer actually takes place in present time. And trigger warning, if anybody is sensitive to this, it does start out with somebody dying. So the main character of the story dies basically in the first two paragraphs. So there you go. Um, it's almost just as long as the other story, but in a very different way. It's much more conversational, so very much easier to read. Hopefully you'll understand what's going on here. Again, I don't want to give away any spoilers for this story, but it's an interesting story, and I will tell you that it does deal with uh, the concept of life after death. So there you go. But not as many discussion questions that you need to be cognizant of or be able to answer, but they're still there. Um, I don't know how Asimov felt about the story, and I don't have a recording of him reading it, but Adam Clark does a pretty good job of it here. So again, I recommend that you maybe follow along while he listen to this, read it yourself, be able to answer those questions. Um, it's a pretty good story. I have a lot of students who actually prefer this story to the last question, which is fine. Clearly, I don't, but I still think it's a good story, and I think it gives us a lot to think about. So be sure that you give it a good listen. I don't really have to give too much more uh, introduction than that. Then we have, like I said, the discussion board, and with the discussion board, you're going to talk about both the stories. Then you're going to watch this video about things that Isaac Asimov predicted that came true, and there is a short article about what he predicted in 1983 about what would happen in 2019. So it's really actually interesting to see what he got right, and I think you might be surprised. Isaac Asimov is a really interesting guy, as you will find out from the notes. And if you ever, well, I have some theories about things that he might have been involved in World War II. If you've heard of the Manhattan Project, everybody knows what that is, I would hope. But you should also look into something called the Philadelphia Experiment. Now, it's more than just a movie. I know they made a popular movie about it some years ago, and everybody wants to say, oh, it was just a movie, but it was an actual thing based on what actually happened, and the movie was based on that, and Asimov was involved, which makes it kind of exciting to know that he was involved in that. It makes me believe it ever so more. But I may have a tinfoil hat in the closet. Who can say? I do want to show you about the videos for this particular module, which are here. And again, you won't be able to see these until you've done or until you've looked at the stories. But this video, actually, you can see this one. This one talks about entropy. And actually, these two stories help explain the last answer. So if you read through the last answer and you find yourself kind of like, oh my God, what did I just read? Then you might want to come here and take a look at this video about what entropy is. And it's actually a very good video about entropy. Entropy is a scientific theory about, well, I think it's more than a theory, about how energy, once energy starts moving, it never stops moving until it dissipates. And that has a lot to do with what's going on in the story in the last answer, or the last question, I'm sorry, the last question. That's one of the central questions that keeps coming up is how can we stop entropy? Because basically entropy is the universe going from order to chaos and ultimately breaking apart and all of the heat and energy leaving as it's been used up, and that causes the heat death of the universe. And once all of that is gone, then everything is dead, which sounds kind of depressing. And it kind of is, the whole concept of entropy. So throughout the whole story, in the last question, mankind asks, how can we stop entropy? And so far, the answer, as far as we know, is you can't. So this is what the concept of entropy is, but it's not just a scientific kind of a thing. It kind of applies in a meta fashion all over the place. So you might want to give that a listen. It's actually a pretty good video. It's a short, good video. The Machine at the End of Time is a little bit longer. It's set up more like a podcast type of video, but it does talk about the story and gives you a little bit more meaning to it. So if you've read through the story and you find that you still don't quite get it, I would recommend taking a listen to this video as well. And then finally, uh, there are a couple of videos that go with those. Like I said, you won't be able to see those until you've actually looked at the story. These two you can because it gives some explanation. But these two, I want you to read the story first before you are able to just watch the videos. And then finally, there is a couple other videos. There's Isaac Asimov on AI. And again, some of his ideas about uh, what's going to happen in the future. Worth watching. It's a little bit longer, I think. But if you're interested in that, he's actually a really interesting fellow. And then finally, this one, which I usually like to reserve for where I'm able to talk to you guys in person about it, but unfortunately, we're not going to have that kind of time. But this is an actual advertisement. This is not a Black Mirror episode or any other kind of thing like that. This is actually a real company, and they are putting out this service where you record your loved one doing or saying certain phrases, talking a little bit about themselves, and then they have AI, a dedicated AI to basically take your loved ones' images and mannerisms and speech patterns and stories that they have given and uh, well, it's a little creepy, but it's you're able to have conversations with that person once they have passed because the AI will recreate what it believes to be key parts of that person's personality. Um, so it's worth watching. Like I said, it's an actual thing that you can go and purchase and be part of. It's a little, I don't know if a little dystopian, maybe a little dystopian. It's a little weird. I'm not sure we're ready for this sort of thing yet. Um, but I've included it here just so you can see where we are as people, as a society, as human beings right now. These are the kinds of things that are going on in the background with AI that we don't really hear about too much because people are arguing about politics and other things. So, anyways, I thought that was interesting. Those are all the videos, a lot of interesting stuff, but I know that we have a lot of things uh, to do this week. Like I said, I do have next week's assignment. It will be available. You can take a look at it. I'm going to do a separate lecture on the synthesis essay. That will be their final essay, and it will count, I believe it counts as much or a little bit more than the first essay, which I still am getting back to you. I will have everything else back to you as I grade these things. I will be having less and less comments. I'll probably just have more and more summary on them, so be aware of that. Certainly with your analytical essays, they're going to be much more summary, and your final essay will be probably all summary, very little markup on it. Just because I'm going to be running out of time to mark everything up. I will probably mark things, but I'm probably not put comments necessarily on it. So if it's marked, it's either if I have a good comment next to it, that's good, but if it's marked, it's probably wrong. So just know that going forward. Um, Everything else, I'm available via email. Make sure that you're keeping up with stuff, and I'll talk to you guys later.